Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fior, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furutani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gurrell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Waso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nestande, Nilsson, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
We ask, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chambers and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. Lord, life comes at us fast. There are so many things to worry about, so many things to plan, so many things to do. It can become overwhelming. Yet the sooner we get to doing something good personally for someone else, the closer we get to you. For as the psalmist said, Lord, you are good and the source of good. Train me in your goodness. Help us to deal with the fast pace of life, Lord, by coming closer to your goodness. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing as Assembly Member Ma leads us in the pledge. You may be seated. Members, please note that file item 98 has been corrected to reflect that AB 151 was read a second time on Thursday and eligible for consideration today. Clerk will note. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, May 12, 2011. The Assembly met at 9 a.m. Honorable Phenom Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly presiding.
Mr. Allen moves. Mr. Hagman seconds that the second day's journal reading be dispensed with and that the reading of the previous day's journal. Presentation of petitions. There are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor. There are none. Messages from the Senate. There are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, members, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Davis and Perea to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
Also, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow Assembly Member Furutani to have guests and photographers on the floor, and for the Assembly observance of API Heritage Month.
Without objection.
And finally, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly Members Knight and Olson to speak on adjourn in memory.
Without objection. Mr. Perea, would you like to introduce your guests?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would like to welcome the representatives from the Mendota High School chess team. They are the state champions this year. They are here on the assembly floor. With me today we have freshman Sergio Mayares, sophomore Kevin Romero, junior Felipe Beltran, senior Jesse Mendez, coach Vanessa French, and Mendota High School Principal Gloria Bolin. I would like the players in the gallery to also stand and be recognized along with their teammates. Colleagues, can we get a round of applause for Mendota chess team? I'd just like to just briefly state why we have them here today. In a Cinderella story like those in the movies, this chess team from Mendota, a small farming community on Fresno County's poverty-stricken west side, beat more than 100 schools to become state champions at a tournament a few weeks ago. The team came home with 8 team and individual medals and trophies, but they also brought home respect from the 1,300 students who played at the tournament. Most players at the tournament came from big cities and upper middle class homes. The Mendota Unified Chess Team started out with 30 students in 2001 when Coach French started working with the kids. Since then, the club has grown to 60 students from kindergarten to high school. Under Coach French, they have not only improved their confidence, but their grades as well. While this win is a significant achievement for these students, they are not satisfied. They have already set their goal next year and hope to make it to the Nationals in the coming years. You are all an inspiration. Please join me again in honoring the California Chess State champions from Mendota High School.
Welcome and congratulations. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce two of our school board member leaders in the San Gabriel Valley, representing the Almani Union High School District. With us today, members, if you'll please help me in welcoming Mr. John Tran and Sal Ramirez, board members with, again, the Almani Union High School District. They're at the rear of the chamber. Please help me in giving them a warm California State Assembly welcome.
Welcome. Mr. Wessel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also would like to ask you to join me in welcoming two very important board members from the one from the Sweetwater School District. We have Arlie Ricasa here joining us, and we also have from the San Isidro School Board District, Raquel Marquez Maiden here. Join me in welcoming them. Thank you.
Welcome. Members, without objection, we will move to file item 132, AC 36. Williams. The clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent Resolution 36 by Assemblymember Williams and others relative to Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, all. I'm pleased to present today ACR 36 on behalf of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus to recognize May 2011 as Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. APIs grew from 4.3 million in 2000 to 5.5 million today. That is a growth of 33% on the population. Currently, APIs constitute 15% of the state's population. And the API community is not a new community in the state of California. Our history goes back for well over 100 years, from Chinese American laborers who came in the mid to late 1800s to work the gold mines and help build the Transcontinental Railroad, to the Southeast Asian community coming in the 1970s on the heels of the Indochina War, many of whom I grew up with in Isla Vista just after they came to the United States, Hmong and Vietnamese alike. API history is incredibly diverse and vibrantly rich. But what we are tied together by...
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
What we are tied together by is challenges that our communities all faced in the U.S. upon coming here, whether it be xenophobic alien land laws that prevented South Asian American farmers from owning farms in the Central Valleys in the early 1900s, and federal immigration laws in 1924 that barred immigrants from Asian countries to the United States at all. In spite of these struggles, API communities have dedicated their lives to their families, their state, and our nation. They developed their own services in community-based organizations and ethnic communities like Chinatowns. They organized, like the Filipino-American farm workers that fought for workers' rights as part of the UFW in the 1960s. They, Japanese Americans, fought bravely for our country during World War II while their families were in internment camps back home. One of those units rescued my grandfather from a POW camp. API Heritage Month serves at a time to honor this history and to acknowledge how APIs continue to contribute to all segments of our society. This month's commemoration of API Heritage Month serves as a reminder of the rich culture and diversity that makes our state a great state. As many diverse API American communities throughout the state celebrate API Heritage Month this May, I hope you will join the API communities in your district to celebrate our proud history and heritage. Please join me in commemorating API American Heritage Month by supporting ACR 36, and I'd ask that the first roll be open for co-authors.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Seeing no further debate, the first roll will be open for roll call. The first roll is for roll call members. For co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. We have 63 co-authors. We will now take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Members, we will now move on to the Assembly's observance of API Heritage Month. We will now hear remarks from Assembly Member Furutani at his desk. Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I appreciate everybody being here today to help celebrate and acknowledge Asian Pacific Heritage Month. As we all well know already by the different programs and presentations we've had on the floor in the last couple of weeks, the month of May seems to represent a real broad diversity, whether we are acknowledging and saluting our friends in our community that survived the Holocaust in Germany and other countries during World War II, or whether we have the bright and very colorful and really significant Latino Spirit Awards acknowledging May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Well, Asian Pacific Heritage Month is a month that we look at from the standpoint of using it as a vehicle to talk about members of our community that have shared their time, their efforts, and their talents to help out not only the Asian Pacific Islander community, but other communities as well. So as chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, I'm here to tell you that we now have a historic high number of members in the legislature. We have 3 state senators and 8 assembly people, but as you well know, term limits giveth and taketh away. In this last cycle, we were able to elect, we have Dr. Richard Pan as a new member from the Sacramento area. And talk about making history, we have our first Dutch Indo-Chinese member of the Assembly, Das Williams. And you all know that Assembly member Ted Lieu termed out, but then we brought him back when he was elected to the state Senate. So our historic numbers reflect the growth of the Asian Pacific Islander community, which hovers around 15% of the state's population. So again, welcome and thank you. And this is our program for Asian Pacific Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Furutani. We will now have a reading from Mr. Fong Tran of Stockton, California, entitled Reclaim History, Reclaim Self. Mr. Tran.
Thank you, thank you. How are y'all doing? Great. My name is Fong. I work locally here in Sacramento with a nonprofit agency called Asian Resources. It's a complete honor to be here. If it's okay, I know this is not always easy. Could I survey by raising hands who knows what spoken word is? Okay, great. You know, this is not the most typical way of showing Asian culture, but as all forms of culture, it's evolving, and so I'm honored to share my form of art. And so this piece is called Reclaim History, Reclaim Self. And like all poets, we have a love poem, so this is a love poem for the love of my life. Okay. Once upon a Vietnam War, single mother of 3, left rice paddies and fabric patches for dream escapes to the land of golden arches. With babies on her back, she left on Oregon trails with no reset buttons. As she trekked through landmine-filled terrain, dodged sky-blotting drop bombs and circus-fly gunfire from every direction. Hidden in the camouflage of blackness of the midnight, she quietly evades the silhouettes of the moon and the ears of communist scouts. She dodges sky-blotting drop bombs, circus-fly gunfire from every direction. She finally reached old Ricky fish boats that stuff people under decks like stuffed sardines, marinated in saltwater urine and the tears of grown men, out at sea to a tip of starvation, a starvation that would eat out her body, a starvation that would starve her children, and hearts would implode as she watched her youngest baby almost die in her own arms. Left landed and stranded in unmarked refugee camp territories in the Philippines. Made listen robotic English teaching earphones that was more robot than teaching. Made push medical syringes that was more syringe than medical. Made swallow rice porridge that was more poor than rice. 8 months were never so long. But she finally made it to America in one-room apartments with another family of 7. Her 3 kids, her $80, and her one hope would just be enough for her to make it in these new alien lands. 1 year later, this woman, this mother, would have me for a son, her second-generation son. You see, these stories have slipped the tongues of many of my ancestors, people that have struggled and sacrificed, not only the Vietnamese, but the Mien, Hmong, Lao, Cham, Khmer. Our folks left homeland so their dreams for our freedom would never die. To my Asian and Pacific Islander community, our stories may be unique and different, but our struggle is all the same. You see, Southeast Asians came up this way through political prosecution, secret RCI wars, and ethnic genocide. They were POWs, not prisoners of war, but refugee camps were prisons of warriors. We are the descendants of guerrilla soldiers and survivors. Our bloodlines run deep like the majestic Mekong River. Our histories rise high like the mountains of the Hmong, and our strength is buried in the potholes of Cambodian killing fields. We stand on these privileged gold-rich grounds, our identities sometimes lost, conflicted, wavered, unsure. But we must find foundation in our families' histories and celebrate our heritage. Only then can we find ourselves most pure. Thank you.
I ask Assembly Speaker John A. Perez and the API Legislative Caucus Chair Warren Furutani to move to the center aisle to receive our honorees. In addition to our honorees, we are joined by other special guests. Let's welcome our Controller, John Chung. I am appointing a special committee on escort to bring our special guests onto the floor for a presentation. Please retire to the rear of the chamber at the appropriate time to escort your honoree. Assembly members Amiano, Bell, Bradford, Brownlee, Campos, Cedillo, Dickinson, Fior, Hayashi, Jones, Lara, Nielsen, Solorio, and Swanson. The recipient of the 2001 APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Business is Christine Young. She will be escorted by Assembly members Amiano and Solorio. Assemblymember Eng will tell us more about her. Assemblymember Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. It is my pleasure to welcome and honor Christine Young with the APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Business. In 1982, Ms. Young joined the New York Life as an agent, where she has built a clientele of over 4,000 accounts worldwide. Ms. Young has been a lifelong member of the $1 Million Roundtable for 28 years and a Life Qualifier 22 times as a top-of-the-table member. Since 1990, Ms. Young has hosted a weekly television talk show, Who's Who on TV, where she has interviewed notable figures such as the Dalai Lama and former President George Bush. Ms. Young is the recipient of the Global Female Chinese Entrepreneur Award and the Asian American Insurance and Financial Professional Association Lifetime Academy Award. Members, please join me in welcoming Christine Young.
The recipient of the 2011 APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Civil Rights is Natasha Sawney. She will be escorted by Assembly members Nielsen and Brownlee. Assemblymember Fong will tell us more about her. Assemblymember Fong.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Natasha Sawney is a partner in the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles offices of GCR LLP, specializing in education, labor, and employment law. Ms. Sawney is a member of the civil rights organizations such as the Sikh Coalition, and she has served in the California State Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs since 2006. She was awarded the Spirit in Action Award from the Interfaith Councils of several California cities for her work in raising funds and awareness for genocide victims in the Darfur region of Sudan, and for her dedication to public service. Members, please join me in welcoming Natasha Sawney.
The recipient of the 2011 APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Law is Lucy Koh. She will be escorted by Assembly members Fior and Campos. Assemblywoman Hayashi will tell us more about her. Ms. Hayashi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm proud to introduce Judge Lucy Koh. Nominated by President Obama in 2010, Judge Koh is the first Korean American to sit on the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California. She's also the first Korean American woman to ever serve as a United States federal judge. This is just the latest accomplishment in a stellar career dedicated to justice and the law. Previously, she was a presiding judge of the County of Santa Clara Superior Court. She's served as a partner with McDermott, Will, and Emery. Prior to that, Judge Koh spent several years at the federal level, serving at the U.S. Department of Justice as an assistant United States attorney specializing in criminal law. Judge Koh is a tremendous inspiration to young Asian Americans, and we are very proud to have her here with us today. Please welcome Judge Koh.
The recipient of the 2011 APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in New Media is Phil Yu. He will be escorted by Assembly members Lara and Cedillo. Assemblywoman Yamada will tell us more about him. Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. It is my pleasure to honor Mr. Phil Yu with the APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in New Media. Mr. Yu graduated with a bachelor's in radio, TV, and film from Northwestern University and earned his master's in critical studies as a provost fellow from the University of Southern California's School of Cinema Television. Phil, fight on. There's a few of us USC types around. Mr. Yu is the creator and editor of AngryAsianMan.com, a popular Asian American news, culture, and opinion blog which celebrated its 10th anniversary just this year in 2011. Building a steady, loyal readership nationwide since 2001, the AngryAsianMan.com has been called by the Washington Post a daily must-read for the media-savvy, socially conscious, pop-cultured Asian American. Mr. Yu worked previously at the Center for Asian American Media, formerly NATA, in San Francisco, and served on the programming committee for the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. Members, I ask you to join me in welcoming and congratulating Mr. Phil Yu, our award winner for the new media. Thank you.
The recipient of the 2011 APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Labor is Josie Camacho. She will be escorted by Assembly members Swanson and Hayashi. Assemblymember Eng will tell us more about her. Assemblymember Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speakers and members. It's my extreme pleasure and honor to introduce to you Josie Camacho with the APIA Heritage Award for Excellence in Labor. Ms. Camacho serves as the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Alameda Labor Council AFL-CIO. It's an umbrella organization coordinating political, community, and educational programs for more than 100 unions and representing over 100,000 workers in healthcare, transportation, education, construction, manufacturing, and service. Ms. Camacho is a member of the Executive Board for Asian Immigrant Women Advocates, a community-based organization that empowers low-income, limited English-speaking Asian immigrant women workers to stimulate positive changes in their workplaces and companies and communities. Prior to leading the Alameda Labor Council, Ms. Camacho served nearly 2 years as its political director. From 2007 to 2009, she was Director of Constituent Services for the office of Oakland Mayor Ron Dellums. Ms. Camacho, along with her husband, Victor Uno, were named Unionists of the Year in 2007 by the Alameda Labor Council. Members, please join me in welcoming Josie Camacho.
The recipient of the 2011 API Heritage Award for Excellence in Public Service is Efren Gore. Efren Gore is unable to be here today to accept his award, but Assembly Member Williams will tell us why he is being honored. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Efren Gore has been instrumental in our community of Oxnard in dealing with youth empowerment, gang prevention issues. He's a founder and the administrator for an organization called Citicorps, which has taken many youths off the street, most of them Latino and Filipino, and given them the opportunity for work training, for job experience, and for a better life. And so Efren Gore is an incredible leader in our community.
The recipient of the 2011 API Heritage Award for Excellence in Public Service are Albert and Anna Wang. They will be escorted by Assembly Members Bell and Silva. Assembly Member Pan will tell us more about them. Dr. Pan.
Speaker and members, it is a particular honor for me as a pediatrician who's focused on children with developmental disabilities to recognize and honor Albert and Anna Wang, the APIA Heritage Award winners for public service. Albert and Anna Wang are co-founded Friends of Children with Special Needs in 1996, when they had a difficult time finding resources and support for their son when he was diagnosed with autism. FCSN is an incredible resource and provides quality services for both the family and the child or adult with developmental disabilities in the San Francisco Bay Area. There are now more than 800 families being served, and there are 30 programs in operation in a center in both Fremont and the South Bay, along with various other activities at recreational centers and churches. So again, welcome to Albert and Anna Wang. Congratulations.
The recipient of the 2011 APIA Heritage Award for Historical Impact are the Nisei veterans. They are represented by Frank Cajeta, Leo Hosota, George Morita, Roy Sato, George Hame, Jim Iso, Howard Matsuhara, Ardavan Kodona, and Koichi Takei. They will be escorted by Assembly Members Bradford and Dickinson and introduced by Assembly Member Furutani. Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Members, everybody well knows, and I'm sure you have heard about the Regimental Combat Team 442nd, the 100th Battalion, the Military Intelligence Service, MIS Group. The Japanese American community honors them here today as they are our heroes and our champions. They are the ones that help free prisoners from the death camps. They're the ones that help free soldiers at the Battle of the Bulge. These in the Lost Battalion, and we are honored to have them here today. They will be also receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor from the President later on, but we welcome you here and we thank you for attending.
Thank you. On behalf of the API Legislative Caucus, I want to thank our honorees and the other guests and my colleagues for participating in this 7th Annual APIA Heritage Awards. Please join us for a reception in the Willie Brown Conference Room, which will begin shortly. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you to all the honorees. If you'd like to come up and congratulate or greet any of our honorees, please do so. We will take just a short 5-minute break while we transition. We will be starting on third reading. Assembly third reading, we will go from the top. If there are members who have not let our floor team know you are ready to take up a bill, please let us know. As we are approaching deadlines, we would like to take up as many bills as we can if members are ready to present. Thank you.
Second reading, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 817, 1222, 343, 356, 612, 679, 728, 18, 849.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Assembly third reading. Members, we will now proceed to item 98, SB 151. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 151 by Senator Correa and others, an act relating to state employees making an appropriation therefore and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Furutani, you may open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm presenting today the last of the 21 bargaining unit MOUs. As everybody knows, we have 21 different bargaining units that work for the state of California. These memorandums of understanding reestablish a stable workplace and improve services because they secure critical and immediate and long-term state savings. This is the product of a negotiation process that resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in savings, and coupled with the MOUs that were approved last year, which resulted in another $500 million in savings. Some of these bargaining units have not had a contract in 5 years. Overall, just for putting it into perspective, California has the fourth lowest, and I emphasize that, the fourth lowest number of full-time equivalent state government employees relative to the population among all of our states. We have 107 employees per 10,000 residents compared to the lowest state, Florida, which has 103, and the national average, which is 143 state employees per 10,000 residents. The key elements of the Memorandum of Understanding are as follows. First of all, after all of the give and take, $209 million will be saved in this year's 2011-2012 budget. Those savings are going to come from pension savings, over $350 million, where employees will permanently contribute an additional 2 to 5% of their base pay toward their pensions. This includes current employees and future employees, taking their retirement contribution to between 8 and 11% of their monthly pay. Second, this memorandum of understandings will eliminate the employer contribution to state peace officers and firefighters defined contribution plan. That saves over $137 million. Also, it will be a part of a 2% state base pay. The contribution of the 2% state pay toward the defined contribution plan will terminate under this bill. The personal leave program will save $232 million in savings. For 12 months, employees' pay will be reduced by 4.62%, and they will receive 8 hours of non-cashable leave in return. Excuse me 1 second. Also, the salary increase, and there will be a salary increase, though, in 2013, but this merely is partially offsetting the increased pension contribution. At the end of the MOU term, only employees at the top step of their salary range will see a pay increase that offsets this increased pension contribution that they are making. While these employees have taken significant pay cuts through these tough economic times, this will be the first pay increase these employees have seen in 5 or more years. The pension savings, $350 million, greatly outweighs the salary increase at the end of this contract in 2013, which will equal $152 million. Another important part of this MOU is management rights will be maintained for the corrections institution. The CDCR will maintain the flexibility it needs to make the necessary changes in order to manage the ever-changing dynamics of the correctional system, while ensuring that a process exists to meet and confer over the effects of these changes. I'm sorry, I take these pills because of my allergies and my mouth gets dry. And also, in terms of leave days, the MOUs provide 2 non-cashable leave days per year. The days expire if they are not used within that year they have been granted. These days will have minimal impact, if any, on the fiscal situation for the state. Bottom line, these negotiated agreements include significant employee concessions that will immediately save state millions of dollars. These agreements also provide a framework for management and employees to work under these contracts for an essential quality of government services that taxpayers deserve. And I would make one other point. It also does some pension reform, and that pension reform is being done at the negotiation table. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furutani. Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I rise in opposition to this memorandum of understanding. I think it is absolutely irresponsible at this time that we be raising pay of the highest paid at a time when people are losing their homes, losing their jobs. This is absolute insanity. This contract needs to be sent back to the governor. It needs to be reworked out. We should not be adding and increasing to the unfunded liability that we have going forward. Every contract that we do should be moving us toward the goal of getting things under control. To be raising pay, to be lifting a cap on vacation pay so that we can accrue it to the point where we have no idea on the day that somebody retires how much we owe them is irresponsible and unconscionable, and I urge a no vote.
Thank you. Mr. Mansour.
Thank you. Members, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. This contract with the California Correctional Peace Officers Association unmistakably illustrates the governor's objective to determine policy decisions based on what's best for state employees rather than what's best for all Californians. What would motivate the governor to award such obscene payouts at a time when lawmakers are scrambling to eliminate multi-million-dollar budget gaps? I urge my fellow legislators not to ratify the Public Employee Union demands before true pension reform is established. To do so would be a violation of the taxpayers' trust and betrayal of their confidence in the ability of elected leaders to act in their best interests. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Furutani, you may close.
Thank you very much. I beg to differ. I understand the concern on the payouts. That's a part of the accrued vacation leave that's a difficult process to deal with because as you deal with the correctional system, what we run into is having to have staffing 24/7. In that situation, if they are forced to take their vacation days, that means more employees need to be hired to fill in for when they're gone. It is a tough situation to resolve, but the issue of cashing out accrued vacation days is something that we have to put on the agenda for further debate and future debate. I also contend that if you look at every one of these 21 contracts, they have built within it pension reform. Employees are increasing their pay, the amount they pay into the pension fund, by 2 to 5%. Employees are increasing the age of retirement in a lot of the bargaining units so that they have to retire at an older age. Now, all of the bargaining units will not use 1 year, their highest year in terms of calculating pension. They will use the average of their highest 3 years. Pension reform may not go as far as some of you want, but if you look at the overall bills that we're dealing with relative to pension spiking, making sure that institutions don't take holidays, that we don't have double dipping, you can see that we are definitely taking strides toward pension reform that will resolve issues that have impacts in the future. I urge all of you to go up on this bill for the memorandum of understanding for these 6 units. It will, after you look at all of the dollars talked about relative to savings and that one pay increase for only the top step in 2013, the result is $309 million saved this year, and based upon the past 15 contracts that we settled with our bargaining units, we saved $500 million last year. All of these savings will be ongoing. So this is absolutely steps in the right direction, and I urge an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 54, noes 17 on the urgency. Ayes 54, noes 17 on the measure. The measure passes.
Okay, on SB 151, immediate transmittal to the Senate. Okay, members, we're going to Assembly third reading. File items 101 through 105 pass and retain. File item 106, AB 485. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 485 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to local planning.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm pleased to present AB 485, which will assist cities and counties in creating infrastructure financing districts to fund transit-oriented development projects. Transit-oriented development can improve local and regional economies by providing needed commercial and residential development projects, including investment in local transit villages by creating jobs through the construction of these facilities and by the employment opportunities associated with related entertainment, retail, residential, and other mixed-use development. AB 485 provides the additional funding that communities need to achieve SB 375 and AB 32 greenhouse gas reduction goals and to create healthy, livable communities. AB 485 will provide essential tools for local governments to create jobs without raising taxes. AB 485 does not implement any new taxes. This bill makes no changes to current property taxes, but rather allows a city and county to direct incremental increase in property taxes within an infrastructure financing district to a transit-oriented development that meets the requirements under the Transit Village Development Planning Act. This bill is very similar to previous legislation I carried since I came to the legislature at a time when the state is examining realignment and redevelopment dollars. Tax increment financing for transit-oriented development is even more critical. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 46, noes 23. The measure passes. File items 107 through 109 pass and retain. File item 110, AB 312. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 312 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal and others, an act relating to civil rights.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. California has one of the largest homeless populations in the country. We have roughly 157,000 homeless people living here. Tragically, we also have the highest rate of hate-based violence against homeless people in the nation. Homeless people make easy prey. Not only are they out in the open, but they often suffer from physical and mental disabilities. Those who attack the homeless view them as easy targets, second-class citizens, undeserving of respect, unworthy of mercy. This past year, homeless people have been set on fire, stabbed, shot, and beaten with baseball bats. Their assailants seem convinced that they are less likely to get caught or suffer serious legal consequences because their victims are so powerless and vulnerable. AB 312 seeks to change that balance of power. My hope is that it shatters that sense of safety from consequences that these bullies seem to enjoy. AB 312 declares that a homeless person, like everybody else, has the right to be free from violence or intimidation. More importantly, it gives them the right to sue their attackers for enhanced civil penalties. AB 312 raises the stakes. It says to these criminals that there will be a very high price for their actions, and it does so without adding additional strain to our law enforcement or correction systems. This measure is supported by various law enforcement, cities, veterans, and advocacy groups. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with respect to the author and what she's trying to do here, I feel I must rise in opposition to this bill. The crimes suffered by the homeless, as outlined, are indeed terrible and tragic. They are, however, crimes that are already addressed in the Penal Code, and they are indeed worthy not only of this body's opprobrium, but of all the dedicated law enforcement efforts that would be made to ferret out, stop, find the perpetrators, and punish them. The problem I have with this bill is that, quite frankly, it seems to add to the Penal Code and indeed to the Civil Code a classification that is not in any way immutable. We have a number of laws in this state that properly recognize immutable characteristics as worthy of additional scrutiny and worthy of additional protection. One cannot change one's skin color. One cannot change one's national origin. One cannot easily and should never be asked to change one's religion. Homelessness is a status, hopefully a temporary status. It is not in the same category of those other categories that we properly recognize and respect. I'd urge that we not weaken those protections by starting to add additional characteristics that are not immutable to the law. Penal Code currently provides for remedies. Civil Code currently allows for civil actions for damages. That's where we should stop. With respect to what is being attempted with this legislation, I think it goes a little too far. I think it weakens existing law and respect for existing immutable categories, and regrettably request that the members vote no on this matter.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Lowenthal, you may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Mr. Wagner for his comments. I do want to share that this does not make homelessness a hate crime in the Penal Code. It has no effect on criminal sentences. It deals only with civil litigation, and that would be added to Civil Code 51.7, as is other statuses. For example, marital status is in that civil code. Political affiliations are also protected classes in this civil code. I think it's time that we take care of the most vulnerable people, 1/3 of whom are veterans, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 20. The measure passes. File item 111, AB 604. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 604 by Assembly Member Skinner and others, and act relating to public health.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 604 is a preventative measure to combat the spread of HIV, viral hepatitis, and other deadly blood-borne diseases by allowing the Department of Public Health to authorize syringe exchange programs. Our major national, state, and international health and medical associations, including the U.S. Center for Disease Control and the American Medical Association, endorse syringe exchange programs as cost-effective and highly successful HIV and other preventive strategy. Our cities and counties that have the highest rates of HIV and of hepatitis are those that do not have syringe exchange programs. The lifetime cost to treat a Californian who has HIV is $600,000. AB 604 promotes a measure that's preventative, that will save our state general fund, especially due to the fact that federal funds have now been approved for new syringe exchange programs. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 24. The measure passes. File items 112 through 119 pass and retain. File item 120, AB 834. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 834 by Assemblymember Roger Hernandez, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Hernandez.
Mr. Speaker and members, I present to you AB 834, which will enhance accountability in high-dollar local contracts with self-renewing clauses, also known as evergreen contracts. Specifically, this bill would require the legislative body of a city, county, or district to annually review any evergreen contract valued at $250,000 or greater that has been made with a private party. This bill passed out of the Assembly Local Government Committee with no votes. Contracts with evergreen clauses can renew on an annual basis, which effectively creates a never-ending agreement. For example, a contract that is set to last for 15 years and has an evergreen clause will automatically renew, causing the contract to last significantly longer than the 15 years. Evergreen clauses change the actual terms of a contract by extending the length of the agreement. Countless agencies are locked into these contracts for indefinite periods of time with prices, terms, and conditions that are often skewed in the favor of the service provider, not the taxpayer. The lack of a formal review of evergreen contracts is irresponsible and detrimental to the interests of our governing body of the people. A precedent must be set for reviewing costly, potentially never-ending contracts, especially given the financial difficulties local governments are currently facing today. AB 834 will not impact finite fixed-term contracts that have a set expiration. And I have to repeat that again, because a lot of folks have been coming to me and saying, Roger, I can't support the bill because our agencies need long-term contracts to pay for their capital costs, capital outlay, to support regulatory changes or requirements. Guess what? This bill doesn't prohibit 20-year contracts. It doesn't prohibit 50-year contracts. This bill, requires the governing body to revisit these contracts, these $250,000 or higher dollar contracts, that they be looked at once a year to make sure that what the taxpayers are paying for, that the taxpayers are getting what they're paying for. So in closing, AB 834 will ensure transparency to high dollar automatically renewing contracts by requiring an annual performance-based review to make sure that contract is still in the best interest of all stakeholders. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chesbro.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill by my good friend and colleague. The reason I rise is because California leads the nation in the world in our waste reduction and recycling. We've achieved in the neighborhood of 60% waste diversion. I have a bill to move California to 75%. I'm hopeful that we will continue to progress as a state. We have gotten there because local governments have the tools to do so, and one of those tools is these types of contracts. Local governments need to have the ability to provide assurance to the investors who build the facilities for recycling in order to keep this state progressing. And so far in our law, we've depended on cities and counties to get us to that 60%. This would remove an important tool for them to achieve that. I think it's a direct threat to our leadership in recycling and waste reduction, and I would urge a no vote.
Mr. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, rise in opposition to this bill. As a local elected official, we dealt with large companies trying to build MRF system, for example, in the city of Huntington Beach. They could not build it without some form of long-term financing. As a member of the City Council, I met with the financial institutions trying to work out long-term financing so we could have a MRF system. Without that, without the evergreen contracts, it wouldn't take place in the city of Huntington Beach. In all due respect, I feel that this is will be very expensive for local government, and we will not see the waste handled in the future the way it has been in the past. Thank you.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have to rise in opposition to this. The evergreen clause, or the rollover, is an instrument that's used frequently in personal or private enterprise when you have an institution or a business that you're doing business with over a long period of time, and it's gained credibility, and you don't need to review every single year. You would review when the contract comes due, be it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, but the extra burden that you'd be placing on municipalities, counties, and cities to review every contract every year if they have an evergreen is unnecessary and wasteful, and I urge a no vote.
Mr. Cedillo.
Just a question of the author, and I know the author comes from local government.
Without objection.
Are these contracts obligatory? Are they mandatory? Are these contracts that local governments must enter into? Or are these contracts which are permissive and optional? You were a member of a local government. Did you engage in these? Were you forced to enter into these?
For the most part, it varies from county to county, and in most counties, it's the cities that are obligated to authorize these contracts. And just to kind of, I think I can answer a lot of your question based on some of the comments. This bill will not require every contract that a city enters to be revisited every year. This bill would only require those contracts that have the automatic renewing clause, also known as evergreen, to be reviewed every year. This is a tax saver, a taxpayer saver. This is a bill that will make sure that there's transparency in the process. This bill, as has been argued, has nothing to do with prohibiting long-term contracts. I understand the benefit that long-term contracts have for both the taxpayer and the industry. We recognize, my office, I recognize myself, that the long-term contracts are necessary for funding the capital outlay costs for the trucks, the facilities, and again, and regulations brought down that require change. This bill doesn't do anything with affecting the long-term contracts that are entered into. This just requires for contracts, this bill requires that for contracts that are $250,000 or more with the automatic renewing element in it, evergreen, that they be revisited once a year by the legislative body that enters into these specific types of contracts. Furthermore, most city councils don't have evergreen contracts for their trash hauling contracts. That is not a requirement for cities to happen. Baldwin Park in my district, Baldwin Park, California, a city of 80,000, has a contract with Waste Management. It's a long-term contract. It's more than 10 years. It's working quite fine, and Waste Management is actually a good union, labor-friendly contract. It's a long-term contract. It's not an evergreen. They're good community sponsors in the community. And guess what? They actually have a lower trash rate in Baldwin Park than the city next door, where the taxpayers spend more for their trash hauling service. They're closer to the facility, but it's an evergreen contract next door in the city of West Covina. So we can make it work. It's working today in California in the majority of cities.
Mr. Cedillo, back on your own time.
Yeah, no, that was interesting, but not really responsive. You were from the West Covina City Council?
Yes, sir.
And you entered into an evergreen contract?
Yes.
You were not obligated to do that?
This has nothing to do with whether the city is obligated to enter it or not. It's where the cities have evergreen, self-renewing,
okay. Thank you.
That they provide the annual. That's what this bill seeks to do.
Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of AB 834. As an individual who spent 6 years of my life as a solid waste director, not until the cities of Gardena, Carson, Compton, Southgate broke their evergreen contracts did they their residential and commercial rates go down. It's true that an evergreen contract is a voluntary process that a city can enter into, but most of the time, city council people are taking the recommendations of staff and know very little about solid waste in the history and the long-term relationships that the haulers have with the landfills and the MRFs and all these other incestuous, you could say, relationships. So it is to the city's best interest to terminate these evergreens, and truly enough, you can enter into 5-year contracts that are renewed in the 5th year, and if the hauler's doing a great job, you're going to renew the contract. But evergreens are usually for 10 years, and at any point during that contract, you decide to terminate that contract. The 10-year kicks in immediately. So a 10-year contract easily turns into a 20-year contract or a 15-year contract, wherever you are in that renewal process. So it doesn't give the city the flexibility that you think it would. A more competitive option for cities is to allow them to enter into contracts between 5 to 6 years and have not an annual review, a midpoint review. It's worked quite well in the city of Gardena. We hit the lowest residential and commercial trash rates in the entire South Bay, and we're still very competitive. I strongly ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Jeffries.
I rise in opposition because I guess I'm wondering why we care to have this body jump into the internal decision-making of local government. Why this body today needs to decide that cities and counties and special districts are not capable of making the right decisions, even though we've not demonstrated today that there are any significant problems across the state that require us to intervene and say, you need to change the way you're doing business. We have seen cases of the city of Bell and others where there are abuses, and this body has taken those cases, specific instances, and addressed how to fix that. But what we're lacking today is specific cases where this abuse, if there is any, has resulted in the taxpayers and the ratepayers across the state getting a raw deal. I guess I'm curious, if evergreens are so bad, why are they in just about every public employee union contract? Why is it that it is okay there, but if you're in the private sector union with a company, an evergreen is going to be bad? I encourage a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Hernandez, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would have to respectfully disagree with the comment that every public employee contract has an evergreen. The fact is, the MOUs that we looked at today, where we're seeing pension reform. Pension reform is not an evergreen aspect of a public employee contract. Employees having to pay more into contributing to their health and their retirement is not part of an evergreen or in terms of public employee contracts. But getting back to this bill here, AB 834, very simply, the majority of trash hauling contracts, evergreen contracts, do not make up what exists in the majority of cities of California. This bill looks for us to do our job. Why do we care? That's the question. Because we have a job as representatives of Californians to make sure that elected officials up and down the state exercise their oversight role. That's unfortunately a role that many elected officials don't exercise, and as a result of that, we've had the problems like in Bell and many cities up and down the state. Elected officials choosing to look the other way while the people that they're representing are getting the shaft. So I'm asking you to stand up for Californians and support a bill that looks to protect the California citizen. I ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Hernandez moves the call. File item 121, AB 1275. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1275 by Assemblymember Torres, an act relating to redevelopment.
Ms. Torres. Oh, pass temporarily. File items 122 through 131, pass and retain. File item 133, ACR 3. Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 3 by Assemblymember Hayashi relative to Korean American Day.
Ms. Hayashi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm pleased to present to you ACR 3. This resolution proclaims January 2011 as Korean American Day, recognizing the historic and continuing contributions of Korean Americans to the state of California. Today, as we celebrate Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I ask that we recognize their accomplishments, their dreams, and their amazing ability to overcome tremendous challenges. Mr. Speaker, I request that first row be open for co-authors.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Speaker and members, I'd like to rise also to support and say that I strongly encourage the vote on ACR 3 representing Koreatown, which is the largest number of Korean Americans in the country in a concentrated area. And we don't need to remind everyone here that the Korean American community definitely has made significant contributions to American society in general and to California society in particular. Again, I ask for an aye vote on ACR 3.
Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to commend the author of this resolution, who herself is a trailblazer, being the first legislator to be elected of Korean American descent to the California legislature. I rise as someone who has spent a great deal of time in the Korean American community, most notably having an office in downtown Koreatown for the last 35 years. And this resolution is important to me because I was there when the entire Southern California erupted in civil unrest. Korean American businesses were burned to the ground. And from the ashes of that rose the determination to be free of the stigma of this great tragedy. And out of that, we see the sons and daughters of those that came here enslaved for many hours in the garment factories, in the service stations, in the service industry. And their children are now judges, as we honor today, legislators, elected officials, businesswomen, the first Korean American supervisor elected to the San Francisco City and County Board of Supervisors. So therefore, I think this is a great day. This is a great resolution. And the time of Korean Americans is here, it's now, and we applaud them.
Mr. Cedillo.
Question for the author. Never mind, just kidding. Actually, it's been an incredible honor and privilege, my time here in the legislature, to represent Koreatown in Los Angeles. It's been a very enriching experience. It's a community that's growing. It's a community that shares our American values, a great love for democracy, a tremendous commitment to family, very entrepreneurial, and very patriotic. And so I'm very proud to join. I had the privilege, once I was elected to the Assembly the first time, to travel to South Korea, to get to know their culture, to know their values, and to know the great richness that they bring here to America. Breakthroughs are happening every day, as we heard today. Just recently, a new Korean American was elected to the Los Angeles Community College Board. Advances continue in business, in politics, and in culture. And so I'm very proud as the former representative of Koreatown, to ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this resolution.
Thank you. So Ms. Hayashi has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors. Members, this first roll is open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is for co-authors. Okay, let the record reflect we have 72 co-authors. We can take a voice vote on this measure. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File items 134 through 136 pass and retain. File item 137, AB 887. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 887 by Assemblymember Atkins and others, an act relating to gender.
Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 887, the Gender Non-Discrimination Act, adds the term gender identity and gender expression to selected non-discrimination laws where only the term gender appears currently. AB 887 ensures that all Californians, including transgender people, are protected equally under these laws. Under existing law, the definition of gender already includes a person's gender identity and gender expression, whether or not stereotypically associated with that person's assigned sex at birth. As such, AB 887 does not confer any new legal status or protections. By specifying gender identity and gender expression in addition to gender, AB 877 makes our non-discrimination laws easier to follow for those who employ, house, insure, and educate Californians. It also helps transgender people better understand their protections under the law. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, members, with respect for the author and what she's trying to do here, I feel I must rise in opposition and will be brief. It is true that the status of being transgendered is protected in current law. The problem with this bill is that it adds, again, something that is not in any way immutable. One's particular gender identity or particular gender expression, which might well change on a day-to-day basis. That is, in fact, in my opinion, trivializing what the law is trying to do and trivializing some of the important protections that we have previously enacted with respect to immutable characteristics that I mentioned in response to Ms. Lowenthal's bill earlier. So with due respect for what is being attempted here, I urge you, as this weakens existing law and protections for immutable characteristics, I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you very, very much. And no, I think the only thing that might be trivializing about this is treating it as if addressing it was such. But this bill has a lot of gravitas, and certainly it speaks to a liberation education movement that has been happening here in California and across the United States. I'm wondering, it's not like you're choosing your favorite flavor of ice cream here. This is not something people make frivolously or without a deep thinking and commitment, and I might add a lot of angst. I do have a question for the author, though. Is this your first bill?
Mr. Amiano, it is actually not my first bill. My first bill was on Thursday.
So you're in transition?
I am always in some form of transition or other.
All right, I strongly urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Atkins, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really believe that this bill provides equal responsibility and equal protection under the law. It doesn't change existing protections, but it does clarify for people who are responsible to follow the law and for those who should be protected under the law. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 53, noes 23. The measure passes. File item 138, AB 930. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 930 by Assemblymember Gordon, an act relating to the California Building Standards Commission.
Mr. Gordon.
Since 1953, the California Building Standards Commission has created and administered building codes in the state of California. There are 11 members on the commission, designated in statute to represent the public, building design professionals, the building and construction industry, local government building officials, fire officials, and labor. The Commission recently adopted a new California Green Building Standards Code known as CalGreen. CalGreen went into effect on January 1st of this year. To assist with the implementation of CalGreen, AB 930 would require that one member of the Building Standards Commission be experienced and knowledgeable in sustainable building design, construction, and operation. Since this bill will not increase the membership of the Building Standards Commission, it will not impact or increase state costs. This bill will simply assure that as future appointments are made to the Building Standards Commission, consideration is given to assure that at least one member of the Commission has the expertise necessary to make CalGreen a reality. I respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no further debate or questions, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 10. Measure passes. File items 139 through 141, pass and retain. File item 142, pass and retain. File item 143 on the amendments, AB 57. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 57 with amendments by Assemblymember Bell.
I'm sorry, pass and retain. File item 144, AB 144. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 144 by Assemblymember Portantino and others, an act relating to firearms.
Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I rise to ask you to support AB 144, a bill that seeks to close a loophole in California law that allows citizens in Main Street settings to walk into Starbucks, to order a cup of coffee, to go into a movie theater carrying an unloaded weapon on their openly exposed, with the bullets or the clip right next to it on their belt. This presents a real threat to law enforcement who get called out often, taking their attention away from other duties. During these tough economic times, we should be maximizing law enforcement resources. It puts those law enforcement officials in harm's way. When an average family out on a Friday night or a Saturday night wants to go to the mall or wants to go to the movies to have a peaceful night out, and they see a collection of folks carrying these weapons, they oftentimes call law enforcement that has to come out and confront these folks who are openly carrying their weapons. That family and that law enforcement official should not be on Main Street and having to confront the unnecessary display of these firearms. Again, this is a loophole in California law. You need a license to carry a weapon. You need a license to have a concealed weapon. But we do not require any training or any licensing or any procedure to openly carry these unloaded handguns. And unloaded is really not the accurate description, because the clips, the magazines, the bullets can be on the very same belt with that weapon. That's too close for comfort. You don't need a handgun to order a cheeseburger. You don't need a handgun to get a cup of coffee. The person on Main Street, California, has the same rights as everyone else in this great body and in this great state to a peaceful exercise of their family activity without seeing the threat of weapons unnecessarily on our streets. Now, the open carry activists would say that had we been in Arizona, we could have taken out the shooter. We would have been there. Well, frankly, the last thing I want to see in a crowded suburban shopping center is a hail of bullets across the crowd. Let the law enforcement personnel who are trained, who are responsible for public safety, do their job. Let folks who are untrained not openly carry their weapon on our street. This bill does nothing to affect the lawful and acceptable uses of weapons in our society. Let the hunter hunt. Let the person go purchase their weapon and protect their property. But that person's right does not have a right to infringe on the family activity of Main Street, California. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote to close this loophole in California law. Let law enforcement do their job without having to unnecessarily get called out and confront the open carry activists in an unnecessary display of these weapons on Main Street, California. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. What the author is trying to do is limit and curb the Second Amendment. It's that simple. He's interested in stripping away a fundamental right. It is not just the right to keep, but it is also the right to bear arms. You know, our founders took this right very seriously. They said a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You know, it's funny that to hear talk about law enforcement being inconvenienced. You know what? Law enforcement has a job to do, and they have an important function in our society. But our founders trusted the people. They trusted the people far more than they trusted anyone else, and they felt that it was necessary for the people to have this right. And I think to take this away at this time is the wrong time. We need to be increasing and repealing these assaults on the Second Amendment because we want California ultimately to be a free state. In order to live in a free state, you occasionally have to suffer inconvenience. And you know what? I'll accept that. I'll also accept the cost. If it costs us a little more to live as a free man and a free woman in 2011 in America, then I'm okay with that. What I am not okay with is the casual stripping away of rights and liberties that were guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States that each of us swore to uphold and defend. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Fuhr.
Cost. Let's talk about cost and who stands with the author on this bill. The police chiefs of the state of California stand with the author of this bill in support of his measure, principally because of cost, not in dollars, but potentially in lives. Do any of us in this room want to bring our families to an event where people are carrying exposed weapons, wondering whether the mere presence of those weapons will lead to other people to consider those with those exposed weapons a threat and engage in very dangerous activity? Do any of us want to be in a situation where law enforcement officers, seeing someone with an exposed weapon in what otherwise might be a dangerous setting, potentially make the mistake of firing on that person because that person is thought of as a threat? These are the reasons why our law enforcement leaders support this bill. On my view, this is a public safety measure, and all of us are pledged to support public safety in our districts. This is not about a diminution of anybody's Second Amendment interests or rights. This is about the manner in which you carry a weapon in public. Let's distinguish the two from each other. A well-regulated militia has nothing to do with someone carrying an unloaded weapon in public. Let's set the record straight and think hard as you vote on this bill, the context in which you and your families may find yourselves as this measure has debated, and last year this measure lost. It emboldens the carrying of these weapons in public. Bad thing. Let's stand with our police chiefs and support this bill.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. We did have a very spirited debate about this bill last year, and this is identical to the bill that we voted down last year. There's many different items to this. I don't want to get into a big law discussion, but there is some people out there that believe that if this bill goes through, it does embolden the CCW argument to be passed so that this state will become a shall-issue state. Now, of course, I support that because I wrote that bill, so I'm for that argument. But I don't think that that's the purpose of the author of writing this bill. I think that one of the arguments, and as we see these mics going up from the Los Angeles delegates, Los Angeles has a huge problem with this. Los Angeles, you can do something about this. You can pass a resolution. You can do an LAMC. You can have this in charge. You can do it. Do it. Instead, you come up here and you pick on something that is mostly a rural issue. Probably 99% of the open carry is a rural issue. Has zero to do with Los Angeles, but since Los Angeles continues to bring this up, this seems to be the issue that they want to pass. That's not right. There has never been a police report. There's never been a brandishing. There's never been an issue with the open carry, law-abiding citizen. Not one. In fact, when I was in committee, I asked the author, did you bring forward police reports to show that this has become an issue, that this is some rampant problem that we've got? Not a one. I've talked to the police chiefs. Not a one. I've talked to several of the different police agencies up and down the state. Yes, once in a while we get a call. We go over there and we handle it and we leave. No police report, no crime, no criminal activity, law-abiding citizens doing this. So what do we do here today? Because we can, we make a law against that law-abiding citizen to get rid of it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going down that slippery slope that we always talk about. This does have a lot to do with the Second Amendment, and I do think that there is some discussion that will come up out of this. But the fact of the matter is, rurally, this happens across the state, and there hasn't been an issue. Not a one. I ask for a no vote.
Mr. Calderon.
Now, generally, I would be telling you, all of you, that nothing speaks louder than your vote. But I feel compelled to have to say a few things. First, this bill was not voted down in the House last year. We ran out of time. And my good colleagues on the other side of the aisle helped us with that. But so we want to help you. We want to thank you for that. So now we can bring it back for a full debate. Second, there is no constitutional right, not one, that cannot be regulated if there is an overriding purpose. Doesn't matter what that constitutional right is. If there's an overriding governmental purpose, then that right can be impacted and can be regulated. Now, here's the deal on this open carry. And by way of credentials, when I was a freshman, I voted for H.L. Richardson Bill. He was and is an icon for the NRA. He was the darling of the NRA back then. And it was a bill about allowing guns in the home. And I voted for it when my colleagues were voting against it because I represented, and I still do, East Los Angeles. And many times when they call the police don't come. So I get it. And I understand that. But here's the deal. If you have a gun and you're just carrying the sidearm in open, there isn't anything a police officer can do to ask you to give him that gun. There has to be some kind of probable cause. So how do we know if that gun is loaded or not? So that's the first dilemma. The second situation is where if you have bullets and gun on the same clip. Now, the level of rhetoric that we have been using as we talk to each other, not only in this state, probably even more so at the federal level, is very, very vitriolic and has not been very, very civil. We have not been civil with each other. I think more so at the federal level than California. I think we're pretty civil with each other over here. But the deal is that there is always going to be that one nut. Not someone who believes in their Second Amendment rights, but that one crazy person that is going to, for reasons understandable to us, is going to make a scene and is going to kill someone. And by having that gun and the bullets there, it just makes it easier for that to happen. And in this case, and since we can't, even when the bullets aren't on the clip, since we don't know, I think what we need to do is we need to be able to control that a little bit. This is not a rural problem necessarily. I saw a lot of guns being carried in the open in Washington, D.C. on many of the demonstrations over Obamacare and a number of other Obamacare. You guys got me saying that. Governmental health care reform and a lot of other issues. I don't think this is not taking away the right. What this is doing is this is helping the state protect other people by developing some kind of regulatory scheme where we can know or have some idea whether a gun is loaded or where that nut is. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, a loophole? Nay, not a loophole, a constitutional right. Such a de minimis argument that this is a loophole. A loophole that's long established and settled in American society, long undergirded as, in fact, that constitutional right. And this constant attempt around here to remove that constitutional right. Those who believe in the Second Amendment truly have taken to having holsters, not with guns, but they roll up a piece of the copy of the United States Constitution as a reminder you're trampling on the United States Constitution and that historic right of Californians and Americans. You are disarming our citizens while doing nothing whatsoever to prevent criminals from using weapons to continue their carnage in the streets. In fact, we're voting for things like AB 109 around here that are going to put over 100,000 inmates and parolees in our community. Be advised, ladies and gentlemen, they won't be obeying any open carry laws. That's where we should place our focus, on ensuring public safety in our streets and doing the rehabilitative things we can do for criminals without letting them all out to regain havoc in our community. So repealing AB 109 would be a better dedication of our energies here. You keep in mind that it's not a common practice for Californians to carry any weapon. More so in rural areas where there are many other imperatives, I think, that would require it. Particularly those of us who have worked out in the fields and have had to deal with rattlesnakes and such. There's a good self-protection cause to carry a weapon. But even in communities, and this bill contains a convoluted, vast array of exceptions that no law enforcement official will ever be trained sufficiently to respect and heed. So there will be apprehending individuals, not knowing whether or not they have violated this law that is so cumbersome, in such a cumbersome manner drafted. No, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a good use of our time here today to disarm and to characterize a historic constitutional right as a legal loophole.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. And with all due respect, the only reason a person would openly carry a firearm is to use it, or to make people believe that they would use it. This is an act of intimidation. Instead of resolving conflicts, intimidation is a way of engendering conflict. The very fact that a person is showing their weapon can escalate an otherwise minor problem into a violent and tragic one. It seems to me that the opposition to this bill assumes that quick access to a firearm prevents crime. In fact, a person who gets angry and has a firearm at the ready is far more likely to cause violence than if a firearm weren't readily accessible. In an age of violence and terrorism, the last things we need on the streets are more guns. I am proud to be a joint author of this measure and urge an aye vote.
Dr. Halderman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to ask the author a question?
Without objection.
Thank you. Sir, my question is about the wording of the exceptions, and there are more than 25 of them listed in this bill. One of the exceptions is that it would be permissible to do the following: the open carrying of an unloaded handgun within a school zone, or with the written permission of the school superintendent or his designee. I just wondered where that exception came from, and if it's dangerous in Starbucks, wouldn't it be dangerous on a school ground, which this bill exempts?
The current bill tries to be or is consistent with the current school zone laws on the books. So the references to the school zone are consistent with the current school zone references. We did not want to get in conflict with other current laws as they pertain to the school zone. So that's why it's consistent with the school zone.
Ms. Skinner.
Members, I rise in support of AB 144. And I'm curious that the debate is centered around that this is going to impinge on our citizens and our constitutional right to bear arms and carry weapons. This does not in any way infringe on anyone carrying a concealed weapon that has a concealed weapon permit. What this does, and I am speaking to the notion that it is our right to put boundaries around even constitutional rights to ensure public health, safety, and welfare. There is a city in the East Bay that borders at least three of myself and two colleagues' districts, Walnut Creek, where at a Starbucks there, over not in the recent months, but over a 2-year period, there were many proponents of open carry who would show up at this Starbucks and have their weapons fully revealed to the public. Now, this may seem like just a innocent act of demonstration of someone's rights, but I had an unbelievable number of constituents who called me, who then would no longer support that business because they were fearful of their lives. They wouldn't bring their families. They were afraid when their children were there. And what they were afraid is that the very evidence of the weapon could provoke someone else to become violent and could invoke an act of criminality unintentionally, and thus put everyone who was around there then at risk, whether it was law enforcement or just regular folks at that store. And this addresses that problem. It does address a loophole in our law, and I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I too rise in opposition to this bill. Heard a lot of arguments on the floor today, how you could have someone you don't know, a crazy guy with put a gun on his belt and cause havoc. We have the tightest restrictions on buying handguns anywhere in the United States. We have restrictions on who buys it with a background check. You must wait 2 weeks. We have restrictions now on when you buy ammunition. They want to have you get fingerprinted and show your driver's license. We have counties who do not issue concealed weapons permits. We have all these restrictions with no evidence whatsoever presented here or in committee that this is a problem that needs to be fixed. Yet, we have high crime rates in this state. We have criminals carrying guns who have not following the rules. There are crimes left and right for brandishing firearms. There are crimes if you don't have a license to carry concealed. There are crimes if you do not transport your weapon in a proper manner from point A to point B, even to a firing range. Members, this is an attack on what our Constitution is founded on, one step at a time. As a private business owner, if I want to put up a sign that says no open carry allowed, like some stores already have, I have the right to do that. If I'm a local government official that says in my city this is not the right way, we could do some things like that too, make some more restrictions. You're putting a statewide law on areas that are not heavily populated. I think sometimes we spend too much time in Sacramento or home cities and we don't know what it's like in most of the area of California that is very rural, that there are reasons to have this. Now, when people wear their firearm unloaded and protest here like we had at the Capitol or walk into Starbucks to protest, they are executing their constitutional rights to give their opinion. Now, we're going to sit there and put restrictions on the demonstrators outside when they pick up sticks or signs that may be threatening in some way. No, we applaud them for speaking out and saying what they feel. We should do the same thing with this. This has not been an instance or rash of crimes permitted. Let's stop attacking the law-abiding citizens in this state. Let's stop